A very good afternoon to you. This is your Friday edition of the Daytime Update as we keep you abreast of all the day's breaking and developing stories, one of which is that Germany has officially acknowledged that it committed genocide during its colonial era rule of Namibia. Germany's Foreign Minister Heiko Maas said in a statement, and I quote, "In light of Germany's historical and moral responsibility, the country will ask Namibia and the descendants of the victims for forgiveness," unquote. For more on this, I'm joined by President at Africa 55 States and the Organization of African Political Parties Forum, Dr. Charles Sinkala. A very good afternoon to you, Dr. Sinkala, and thank you so much for your time today. This is a long time coming. Since 2015, Germany has been trying to, quote-unquote, heal the wounds of the past, as they say. Tell us about their latest efforts. Are you with us, Dr. Sinkala? I think you may need to unmute.
My apologies.
Yourself.
My apologies. Good afternoon to your viewers. Yes, we might say it's been a long talk, from 2015, but African reparations cases has been dated back as 1945, just immediately after the Second World War. But I think this is what now it is reshaping the African continent in terms of understanding that their past actually was stolen by those who took advantage. And I think this also talks to what President Emmanuel Macron said at conference summit last week in Paris, and he has finally also visited, as I'm speaking, is in South Africa. Also, he went to Rwanda there. He also apologized during the genocides of 2000 and 2001 in Rwanda, where 1 million Hutus and the Tutsis were killed.
Talk to us about the amount that Germany has put forward, 1.1 billion euro, and this is over the Herero-Nama genocide. Take us back in time as to what exactly happened in that era.
How far do you want to go back in time? I will start with in the year 1801, when the psychiatrist industry, was developed in Germany by Francis Gatto, with also another British psychologist, where they believed in a system called eugenics. Eugenics is where they believe that certain people can be bred and others can be eliminated from this earth because they'll just consume the environment and they are undesirable. So what they used to do was they used to eliminate. And I think if you talk about eugenics, this also in Germany it gave birth to the Nazis, training Hendrik Verwoerd, who came and also started apartheid in South Africa. So this is the history of how things started getting unfolded. And as well, if you check fast forward in 2018, the French government also returned, and I quote again, returned the skulls and the bones by those the Namas who were killed, the tribes in Namibia, whom they say they allegedly these were against the unjust laws or colonial systems, but you can clearly see that the Namas were 20,000 at the time in the villages, and they killed 10,000 of them, and as well as the Hereros were at the time 80,000 in some communities, and they killed 65,000 of them. This was something that historians say that it was an aim to eliminate certain sectors of people from certain society. And it's not only in Namibia, but let's talk about Namibia, where they have arrived at 1.1 billion euros. I do not know, maybe yourself, how they arrived at that amount. They kept the negotiations and the offer in secret. We have only seen that they have arrived at that figure. So what methodology did they use in terms of considering how wrong was the German government in terms of during the period of 1884 and 1920 before South Africa put Namibia under administration in 1920, 1945, thereafter. What was their achievement? And if you talk about composition, what would have been the value of those people? We also do not know the exact numbers, because during such a time, there was not much reliable information you can rely on. But if you compare the genocide in Rwanda, about 1 million people were killed in terms of Paris involvement, and as well in countries such as Namibia as well, the numbers could be a lot of numbers. So in fact, if we talk about 100,000, what those people would have been done, what impact they should have done to the government, and what benefit those generations should have brought to the Namibia, then you can compare to the loss. Once you relate those, then you will know the value. But them merely trying to offer that 1.1 billion euros and over a period of 30 years, that is an insult to the African people, and an insult. We know that money or an apology will never going to bring back the loved ones, but at least they must show respect in terms of negotiating regarding this. If you look at their investment in Namibia, for instance, it's over 200 million euros annually. They've got the BMWs, the Mercedes-Benz, the Volkswagen, the bearing companies. It's equivalent to more or less of what is in South Africa, about 600 companies from Germany benefiting from the African soil. So it is quite a bit of a challenge, but we hope that the AU or another international body should have mediated this type of negotiation so that it is open. And it's not only the colonialist, the Germany, but also the Portuguese, the British, and the Arab Springs who colonized part of the African countries. What did they take? Until now, Namibia, South African government, they are paying colonial tax to the colonial masters.
You mentioned something quite key there, Dr. Sinkala. You asked, how does one measure the cost of human life? And if you read that joint statement that was issued, Germany acknowledges that a genocide took place. They use the word reconciliation, but they don't call this compensation. They don't talk about any sort of reparations. And, some analysts have said that this points to Germany wanting not to implicate themselves into any process that might end up having legal implications. If you could just comment on this.
Yes, they are very careful in terms of the international law. They are very careful in terms of dealing with this matter. They've been always trying to set it outside the court. But I think this is where now there's a gap in African unity. President Cyril Ramaphosa should have been involved into such negotiations, and as well as the President General Muhammad from Nigeria, Buhari, should have been involved, and other African leaders on the continent. So that, because this also relates to their territories of what happened at that particular time. And their admittance of saying this was a genocide, yes, it was a genocide, but people are still asking as to how, why, what happened, is this going to continue again? And in terms of economic and relations, also one wonders why now, after so many years, over 100 years, things has happened and Germany has been silent over it. Why now? What are they now coming for? In fact, the apology, it is something which just came short of a full apology, which we needed to talk about what happened in the past and what transpired, and how can we get out of that to have things such as that and not to be a repeat. We still see that multinational companies, especially in Namibia, they are given a very good leeway because they demand certain tax breaks and certain treatment. They call themselves investors. But what is the value of these bilateral economical trade and arrangement that we have with the former erstwhile colonizers? What is the arrangements that we have? And I think the Namibian government should be open about it. They shouldn't rush in accepting that. Because that amount, if you divide by 30 years, it is merely less than 40,000 euros, a year, and that 40,000 euros a year, it is not even equivalent to the senior CEO of Germany, or even in South Africa earning that amount. They earn actually a little bit more than that. So in fact, to them, they lose nothing in just paying that, but they must look at the value of what they are doing. And I'm sure what they are saying in terms of the conditions, I've got no doubt in my mind that certain conditions to fund the infrastructure, the health sector, which they've been doing for quite some time, those have got ties of paying back the money. So this will just be something to cushion the burden that they are part of the globalist agenda, who are trying to undo the past, to apologize what the past was done. But
Dr. Sinkala, talk to us about what this money is meant to do, where this 1.1 billion euro is going to be funneled into Namibia.
Yes, this money will be paid over a period of 30 years. I repeat that. It is 30 years. It's not the cash that is going to be transferred, wired immediately. This money will be paid over the period of time, and the compensation will be towards the infrastructure, not directly to the families of the deceased, but to be put either in hospitals, to be put in roads, construction, or maybe they said they will put, if there is any debt against Germany, or against rather Namibia to Germany, maybe they will write off a certain amount towards that amount. So it is not a very clear thing. That is what I can just sum up from my mind. But for the lack of having that document of negotiations and the terms, we can only speculate that this will be helping the Namibian government, and people celebrate. But so many reparations, arrangement, or apologies on the continent of what happened before has been lost on the media without even implementation of what the money is desired to either cushion of the burden of the loss, because governments change and political systems, especially in Africa, they are not cast into stone. And whoever who comes here will ignore that. Or in Germany as well, government will change, and they'll say, no, we must renegotiate that. But meanwhile, Germany's economical involvement or advantages in terms of Namibia's trade, is well achieved. Between that time, they cushion the arrangement. And I think I was speaking to one of my friends from the university. He said, these Europeans now, they are strategizing, instead of coming so aggressively like what they used to be. Now they want to go with the flow. They want to say that we are sorry of what happened, and they want to pretend that they are actually friends of Africa, by doing this type of tactics. But let's look at the economical trade between the bilateral and unilateral countries from the outside, and we'll see the paper trail of the money that this money actually, which they are granting us, it's actually our money, and this is actually completely nothing compared to the loss that we had, especially where lives were lost.
Dr. Charles Sinkala, we'll leave it at that for this afternoon. Also noteworthy as well, the fact that French President Emmanuel Macron acknowledged the role that France has played in the 1994 genocide in Rwanda. So certainly an atmosphere of quote-unquote reconciliation, a repatriation, acknowledgement of involvement, certainly an era for that at this time. That was President at Africa 55 States and the Organization of African Political Parties Forum, Dr. Charles Sinkala.